Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Welcome to the Montgomery County Council. We're going to kick off the afternoon session with a proclamation recognizing the 100th anniversary of the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce by Council members Fritzen and Stewart. If you're here for that proclamation, please come forward.
Well, good afternoon. I am so excited to be here to celebrate a 100th anniversary of the Greater Bethesda Chamber, which is the original Chamber of Commerce in Montgomery County. This is an organization that has really shepherded in what was once a very small little village outside of the nation's capital into one of the leading economic engines anywhere in the country. And it's just so exciting to be able to watch the growth of an organization that has led to the growth of a community which has some of the signature businesses, small, large, and everything in between, that has really powered Montgomery County, the state of Maryland, and our regional economy for decades to come. We're really excited to be here with my colleague who I get to share this amazing chamber with, Councilmember Stewart. And the two of us are joined by the current and former CEOs, Ali Williams and Janan Italiano, the current staff, Clarissa and Carla, and then we have Charlie Atwell, Adam Murphy on the board, as well as TJ Dan, Jeff Burton from the Bethesda Urban Partnership, and we have the indomitable Carol Trawick, who I refer to as Miss Bethesda. And we're just thrilled to have her here. She has served in so many different roles in Bethesda, including as the former chair of this organization's board. With that, let me turn it over first to my colleague who has the great honor and privilege of sharing this amazing chamber and organization.
Thank you to Councilmember Fritzen. I am so glad to be here with all of you today to celebrate this anniversary, 100 years. So I looked it up, and 100 years is supposed to be celebrated by the color purple. Unfortunately, I got dressed a little early this morning, so I didn't wear that. But the reason is the color purple is because it symbolizes royalty and reaching this great achievement of 100 years. And I think that when we think about the Bethesda Chamber and thinking about royalty and that we have here locally that we want to celebrate, it reminds me of what is so wonderful about Montgomery County, because it is about celebrating our businesses, our small ones and our large ones who do so much in our community. And it is about partnership. And so I just want to say thank you. I feel very honored to be representing part of the community that you all serve and to be able to work in partnership for all of us here in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Ali Williams, the current CEO, who is the person responsible for shepherding in, which is now a 500-member organization that powers 80,000 jobs in the greater Bethesda area. Ali?
Thank you, Councilmember Fritzen. Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Obviously, my dear friend, Councilmember Balcom, who ran the Chamber of Commerce in Gaithersburg and Germantown for a number of years, and Janan Italiano, who ran the Bethesda Chamber for 20 years. I want to thank all of you for being here to help us recognize our 100th year in service as we support, inspire, and advocate for business to better our community. We have great partners as well as the rest of the council, and our great board of directors under the leadership of Carla Young and Clarissa Harris behind me, and Charlie Atwell, who will speak in just a minute, on behalf of our nearly 700 members now. And our large board of directors. I am here to thank all of you for the recognition, and we are very proud of who we are and what we are about to become. So stay tuned for more. I will go home and put my purple tie on, and we appreciate the remarks. Thank you.
I got to say that Carla Clarissa and Allie are doing such an amazing job that our team here at the council can't even keep up with the explosive growth of the Greater Bethesda Chamber, but it speaks to the vibrancy of an organization that 100 years later is really continuing to grow and expand and to power our local economy. Now we're going to call on Charlie Atwell to speak on behalf of boards past and present. Organizations like this only exist because of the volunteer boards that really provide their time, their treasure, and their talent in order to make it possible. With that, let me turn it over to Charlie Atwell.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We appreciate the support of the Montgomery County Council in acknowledging our 100 years. And, you know, we couldn't do it without our membership, without our board. And our chamber, like many chambers, does more than just promote business. We are there to support the nonprofits in our community and to do work beyond the normal business kinds of things that businesses are concerned about. So it is a challenging time. You guys have a lot of hard decisions to make this year. So I guess my pitch to you all would be, let's work for a economic development plan that works for Montgomery County, grows our economy, and doesn't increase taxes. So, you know, we'll keep doing what we do in the business community, and the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce does from small business to the Marriotts of Montgomery County. So the economic engine is there. We need to continue to grow that economic engine throughout Montgomery County. We appreciate Andrew and Kate's support. Thank you very much, and acknowledging us. Thank you.
Thank you. Emphasis not just on Bethesda, but on Greater. And with that, Councilmember Stewart and I are going to read this proclamation in honor of a regal occasion, the 100th anniversary of this amazing organization that's powering our economy. Whereas the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce was founded on April 1st, 1926, establishing a proud legacy of leadership, service, and advocacy for the business community in Bethesda and the surrounding region. And
Whereas for 100 Whereas for 100 years, the Chamber has served as a vital voice for businesses of all sizes, champion economic growth, entrepreneurship, and a strong, competitive local economy. And
whereas the Chamber has played a significant role in the transformation of Bethesda from a small village into one of the region's most vibrant and dynamic economic centers. And
whereas through decades of change and progress, the Chamber has remained steadfast in its mission of supporting, inspiring, and advocating for business to better our community. And whereas
whereas the Chamber has fostered meaningful connections among businesses, nonprofits, and community leaders, strengthening collaboration, innovation, and civic engagement across Montgomery County. And
whereas the Chamber has led impactful advocacy efforts at the local, state, and federal levels to promote policies that support business success and economic vitality. And
whereas the Chamber has supported workforce development, education, community initiatives that enhance the quality of life for residents and employees alike. And
whereas the Chamber's programs, committees, and signature events have provided opportunities for leadership, networking, and professional growth for generations of members. And
whereas the Chamber continues to evolve and innovate, positioning itself to meet the needs of today's business community while honoring its rich 100-year history. And
whereas the year 2026 marks the 100th anniversary of the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, celebrating a century of impact and a continued commitment to building a prosperous future.
now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Council hereby celebrates the 100th anniversary of the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, and be it further resolved that the Montgomery County Council commends its century of service, leadership, and dedication to strengthening the business community and enhancing the quality of life in Bethesda and throughout Montgomery County, and extends its sincere congratulations and best wishes for continued success in the years, decades, and perhaps century to come. Presented on this 21st day of April in the year 2026 by Andrew Friedson and Kate Stewart as the district council members proudly representing Greater Bethesda, Natalie Fanning-Gonzalez as council president, and the entire Montgomery County Council. Congratulations and happy 100.
Thank you so much to everyone, and congratulations once again to the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce for their 1 century. There you go. Anniversary. We're gonna move forward with the next proclamation, and it's recognizing Autism Acceptance Month by Councilmember Will Jowando with the County Executive Mark Elrich. If you're here for that proclamation, please come forward.
All right. Come on down, everybody. How are you, sir? Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. And we still got folks coming. I'm going to slide up even more. There's in the room in the back there. This is one of my favorite months of the year. And before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge everyone who's in the room here. Every April, we fill up this room with a portion of the people who themselves spend the rest of the year uplifting and holding up our disability community, our teachers, our paraeducators, our direct support professionals, the case managers, the parents, the siblings, the providers, and the advocates. And every April, we get to say thank you out loud and remind people how important autism acceptance is. You're the reason why the words we have that we're going to read today mean anything at all. And every year I start, and this will be my last year doing this in this role, by talking about my daughter, Addison Jowando, who's on the autism spectrum. She's brilliant, she's funny, and she's particular about things in a way that has taught our whole family really important things, like how to slow down, how to pay attention. Being her dad, has changed the way I listen, the way I parent my other children, and honestly, the way I legislate and do this job. Every policy conversation, I'm thinking about her. I'm thinking about the folks behind me today and out in the world, the thousands of young people and adults like her who are in our county. This year, very aptly, the United Nations chose a theme for World Autism Acceptance Day, and I think it is the exact right one for this moment. Autism and humanity. Every life has value. Let's just think about that for a second. Every single one of these lives has value. That's a standard. And in 2026, it's a standard we're called to defend more than ever. We're gathering at a time when the support for this community and all of our communities depends on this, remembering this in real time. The federal budget passed last summer includes cuts to Medicaid that begin taking effect this year and ramp up through the next decade. Cuts that hit home for this community. The autism waiver, respite care, supported employment, the day programs that many of you help run in this room. And families around the country and around this county unfortunately are being told the opposite, that some lives do cost too much. But we don't believe that here in Montgomery County. We reject it. We believe that every life has value, and we're going to make sure we act like it. So here in our county, that means protecting and expanding what works. It means fully standing up for our Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Commission and community and listening to what they tell us. I want to thank our DHHS Aging and Disability Service team, our Autism Waiver team, our MCPS Special Education Program, the nonprofits who are represented today, the Autism Society of Maryland, EESNC, X-Minds, Madison House, who just had a great breakfast, as they do every year, Ivy Mount, SEEK, CSS, Upcounty Community Resources, the ARC, PCR, Potomac Community Resources, and so many others. Thank you. We see you, and we're here in this fight with you. I'll close with this and turn it over to our county executive, and then we'll hear from a couple of speakers. Acceptance is not a passive word. Awareness asks us to notice. Acceptance asks us to change our schools, to change our workplaces, our attitudes, our parks, our buses, our doctor's office, so that every person on the autism spectrum, every autistic child born in Montgomery County today grows up in a place where he or she is not just tolerated, not just accommodated as an afterthought, but genuinely belongs. That's the county I want to hand to my daughter. That's the county I want to build with all of you. So with that, I'll turn it over to County Executive Mark Elrich, and then in this order, we'll hear from Dr. Patrice McGee, Azeb Adire, and Melissa Rosenberg, and Sue Keisler, and then we will read the proclamation. Thank you all for being here. County Executive Elrich.
Thank you. And it's a privilege to join Councilmember Jawando and the council and all of you here today to recognize April as Autism Acceptance Month. We're moving past the old models of simply talking about awareness. Awareness is passive, acceptance is active. Autism spectrum disorder is a complex, lifelong developmental reality, and the autistic experience is profoundly diverse. We need to be very clear that autism is not a deficit to be fixed. It is a distinct, valuable way of experience and engaging with the world. Every autistic individual brings perspectives, strengths, and talents that are essential to the fabric of the community. Our job is to ensure that regardless of neurological differences, every person has the opportunity to thrive here. In Montgomery County, we define acceptance through action and through infrastructure. We believe in creating an environment where individuals with autism are seamlessly connected to the support they require when they need it. The reality is that the need in our community is growing rapidly. If you look at the Commission on People with Disabilities annual report, the number of students aged 3 to 21 enrolled in Montgomery County Public Schools diagnosed with autism jumped from 3,649 in 2022 to 4,205 in 2023. That's a 15% increase in just 1 year. As those diagnoses rise, the demand on our safety net and service infrastructure escalates alongside them. And the sad thing is we have no federal support to match the rising need that we see in the community. We're fortunate that MCPS provides a robust way of federally mandated high-quality services for these children until they leave the school system at the age of 21. But government can't do this work in a vacuum. We rely heavily on the dedicated community providers who deliver essential services and direct support to both children and adults with autism and across Montgomery County. And I can't say enough about the people who deliver these services. This is hard work and it's challenging work. It's not often well-paid work, but I think all of us recognize how valuable and important it is for people in the community. Without these workers, we would be we'd have an even far more serious problem than we have today. Beyond the schools, our county government is stepping up to close the gaps. The Autism Waiver Service Coordination Program within our Department of Health and Human Services is doing vital work on the ground. Right now, they're actually managing cases and providing crucial service coordination to over 450 children on the state's autism waiver. That represents 450 families getting dedicated help to navigate a very complex system. So let this month serve as a mandate. We must continue to build a truly inclusive society where autistic individuals are not merely accommodated as an afterthought, but actually actively celebrated and included as core members of our community. We need to support local organizations, advocate for policies that demand inclusion, and above all, listen to autistic voices. We have a responsibility in this work, and I think one of the things that's great about being in Montgomery County, these are the kind of things that all of us take seriously. There is nobody who wonders why we're doing this. I think we're all united in the sense of we know why this matters, we know why we do this work, and I just want to thank the people who, on the ground, who make it possible to serve the individuals in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, so first we'll hear from Dr. Patrice McGee. Where is she? Oh, there she is.
I'm short and hard to see. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see you again. So first, I want to thank I want to thank Councilmember Jawando, as well as County Executive Elridge, for your unwavering support. You are both champions for autism and the intellectual and developmental disabilities community, and it's needed now more than ever. I am joined today by a couple of the dynamic aging and disability services service area leaders and subject matter experts. Ms. Kim Mayo, the Senior Administrator for CSN. I can't see you, so if you could just wave wherever you are. There you are. Awesome. And then Kelly Snipes, who is the Autism Waiver Program Manager. So our Autism Waiver, in collaboration with MCPS, offers intensive individual support services, respite care, family consultation, and therapeutic integration. Eligibility is determined by our state partners. And on April 2nd, which marked World Autism Acceptance Day, our community support network for people with disabilities hosted an Autism Waiver Spring Bash. It was a fun-filled day where families were able to enjoy time doing sensory-friendly activities, eat lunch, and talk with our Autism Waiver staff. So we are looking to make this event bigger and more public next year. And so we will need all of you, all of these wonderful partners up here with me, to make that happen. So we have moved, as stated, beyond awareness toward meaningful acceptance of autism spectrum disorder. We celebrate and emphasize the understanding and inclusion of neurodiversity. So I'll close here and just state that the Department of Health and Human Services is an integrated department under the leadership of Dr. James Bridgers, our fearless leader. He's up here somewhere as well, if you could wave. Awesome. Aging and Disability, in partnership with our thought partners in Public Health Service, will continue to follow the science. Scientists have conducted extensive research for decades, and it is clear ASD is not caused by vaccines. We celebrate the beautiful minds of persons with autism. I am happy to be here to observe Autism Acceptance Awareness Month and to shine a light on autism spectrum disorder. And so I'll say that again, Autism Acceptance Month. Thank you.
I'm always happy to see Linda Carpenter Grantham and Eric from Blue Runway. They're wearing their trademark Eric's ID Law, which my daughter has one. Get one. You can get your nice, beautiful butterfly to show that you have an individual. 18,000 people have gotten it so far. That deserves a round of applause. Good work. Now we're going to hear from Azeb Adiri, who runs EESNC. They are an organization that expands access for the Eritrean and Ethiopian community. And they just had an awesome run this weekend. Come on over, Azeb.
Good afternoon. My name is Azeb Adere, the president of the Ethiopian Eritrean Special Needs Community, ESNC, a nonprofit here in Montgomery County, serving individuals with autism and their families. And also, with other people with other developmental needs across the DMV. On behalf of our families, I want to sincerely thank County Executive Mark Ehrlich and Council Member Will Jawando for recognizing Autism Acceptance Month with this proclamation. This is not just a ceremony, it sends a powerful message to every autistic person and their family that they are seen and are valued and they belong in this county. At ESNC, we work every day to make sure our African immigrant families, who often face language and cultural barriers on top of everything else, can access the support and services their loved ones deserve. Moments like this give our families hope. Thank you for standing with us together. We will keep building a Montgomery County where every individual, no matter their ability, can truly thrive. God bless you and God bless our community.
Thank you, Azeb. Melissa Rosenberg, the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Maryland.
Thank you. On behalf of the Autism Society of Maryland, I want to thank County Executive Ehrlich and County Council Member Jawando and all the council members for recognizing Autism Acceptance Month today, alongside these many organizations and individuals who support the autism community year-round. As we continue to serve individuals across the lifespan, and that's from toddlers to a growing number of seniors, we remain focused on a few key priorities. First, safety. Initiatives like the Butterfly Driver's License and ID, championed by Eric and his mom, have reached over 18,000 people, as we just heard, with hidden disabilities in just 6 months and growing to other states. But recent events remind us that there is still more to do. Second, education. By investing in targeted autism programs and services, we help children reach their full potential while building pathways to independence. Third, family support, recognizing that each journey is unique. And fourth, connection, creating inclusive, sensory-friendly opportunities that help individuals and families feel welcomed and engaged. Last weekend, that was Shine Brighter. That was hosted by Montgomery Parks here in Wheaton. Together, we must work together to ensure Montgomery County remains a place where everyone can belong through access to education, employment, housing, transportation, and recreation. And that takes commitment and it takes funding. Thank you for making our community one where everyone can thrive. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And last but not least, Sue Keisler from X Minds. Hey, I think that's about your height.
No, maybe a little lower, a little shorter than that. Okay. All right. Okay. I want to thank Councilmember Jawando and County Executive Mark Ehrlich for hosting this event and for inviting our organizations to talk briefly about the work we do. And I also want to thank you for everything you do to support our community. The organization I represent is X Minds. Our core mission is to address a problem that is familiar to anyone who has a child with a disability. Children with special needs often don't get the supports and specialized education at school that they need and they're entitled to under federal law. If kids don't get the support they need at school, they won't be successful or happy. And that's a problem in itself, but it also sets up a longer-term concern because children who fail at school won't be as ready for employment and independence when they graduate, and they'll never have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. X Minds addresses this problem with a range of services. We offer individual consults to answer parents' questions about navigating special education. We host a speaker series with monthly webinars on important topics like how to handle bullying. And we maintain a website full of resources about MCPS special education programs and many other topics, including one of our most popular, a guide to local autism-friendly summer camps. But we know that parents and caregivers need more than just information. They need a supportive community and connections to other caregivers who can share their experiences. That's why we sponsor parent discussion groups and playground meetups for families and social events for autistic teens. And through these efforts, families are finding social connections and nurturing support, not only for parents, but for their kids too. And everything X Minds offers is completely free. Any family of an autistic student is welcome to make use of our resources and participate in our community without cost. With the support and community X Minds provides, Hundreds of Montgomery County parents and caregivers every year are able to be their child's best advocate at school and help ensure that autistic students have the same opportunity to thrive as any neurotypical child. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you about our work.
All right, we're going to read the proclamation. County Executive and I, and Eric is going to help me. You didn't know that. You didn't know that, but come help me, okay? You ready?
Eric said he getting one. That's
All right. All right. No? Okay. You want to? All right. I want you to. All right. Whereas the Autism Society recognizes April as a time to uplift the experiences, identities, and contributions of autistic individuals, emphasizing understanding, inclusion, and meaningful support to ensure that autistic people are valued, respected, and fully included in all aspects of community life.
Whereas on April 2nd, 2026, the United Nations marked World Autism Acceptance Day with the theme Autism and Humanity. Every life has value, reflecting a global shift from awareness to acceptance, appreciation, and human rights-based inclusion aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And
whereas autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a confident lifelong developmental condition that generally appears during early childhood and can impact social skills, communication, and relationship and self-regularity. And
whereas ASD presents differently in every individual, with each person having unique strengths, needs, and perspectives. And
whereas Montgomery County has a long history of investing in and partnering with organizations that provide high-quality services and supports for autistic individuals and their families, fostering inclusive opportunities for educational, social, and community participation. And
one more.
The County Intellectual and Developmental Disability Commission continued to identify service gap and advising county leadership on policy that support individuals with intellectual and developmental disability, including autism residents. And
whereas the county recognizes the importance of advancing acceptance, understanding, and the full inclusion of autistic individuals and their families, and celebrates the many ways autistic people enrich our community while reaffirming its commitment to dignity, belonging, and equity for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Executive, Mark Elrich, and the County Council of Montgomery County hereby proclaim April as Autism Acceptance Month in Montgomery County and encourage all residents to foster a community grounded in acceptance, empathy, and respect for autistic individuals. Presented this day, the 21st of April, signed by the County Executive and the Council President on behalf of myself and the entire Council. Happy Autism Acceptance Month, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. That was a wonderful proclamation and very powerful, celebrating Autism Acceptance Month. Thank you to everybody has come today. We're going to continue with our council business. Thank you so much for coming. I'm trying. What a lovely cloud. All right. Okay, we're gonna continue with our council business. Thank you to everyone for paying attention to the words that I'm saying right now. Thank you, thank you. It was great to see our county executive in the crowd. Thank you so much. We're gonna continue with agenda item 6 is a public hearing and action on a resolution to approve supplemental appropriation 26-56 to the FY26 operating budget, Montgomery County Government Office of Food Systems Resilience FY26 Food Aggregation Grant Program for $300,000. Source of fund, private grant. We like those. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are no speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. We will now move on to action portion of this item. Is there a motion to approve supplemental appropriation 26-56?
So moved.
Moved by Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom, second by Councilmember Don Lukey. Those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous for those present today. I'll try. Agenda item 7 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve supplemental appropriation 26-64 to the FY26 operating budget, Montgomery County Government, Department of Health and Human Services, Continuum of Care Planning Activities Grant for $500,000, around that. Source of fund, federal grant. Action scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are not speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Now we're gonna move on for the action on this item. Is there a motion to approve supplemental appropriation 26-64? Moved by Vice President Marilyn Balcom, second by Councilmember Evans. Those in favor, please raise your hand. It is approved unanimously. We're gonna move on to the council will sit as a district council for the introduction of 2 zoning text amendments. The first one is ZTA 26-06, accessory residential uses, accessory dwelling unit. The lead sponsor is the council president at the request of the planning board. A public hearing is scheduled for June 9, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. Can council staff provide any background?
Of course. So this ZTA is proposed by the planning board, who we thank for their help with this one, under a bill passed last year by the General Assembly. Every jurisdiction has until October 1st, 2026 to pass a law for accessory dwelling units in order to promote housing. As you know, the county does already allow accessory dwelling units, but the state law is more liberal than the county, so this will just bring the zoning ordinance into conformance by amending, I believe, some of the site requirements, the size requirements, and the parking requirements.
It's so weird to hear that the state is more liberal than Montgomery County. But anyway, so thank you for that. The second item for introduction is zoning text amendment 26-07, solar collection system use standards. Lead sponsor is the council president at the request of the planning board. A public hearing is scheduled for June 9, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. Council staff, can you please describe this ZTA?
Similarly, the General Assembly passed a new bill related to solar collection systems. This ZTA will again update our zoning ordinance to bring us more in compliance with that state law.
Thank you so much for all your work. We're now going to move on to the last item of today's agenda is item 9, a briefing of youth safety and security. I'm going to ask, besides council staff to come forward, I'm going to ask our friends and partners from MCPS police department and HHS to move forward. As I have mentioned to everyone here before, I decided to put this item together because when we talk about public safety, it's a combination of different agencies, but at the end of the day, we're one county. And it takes collaboration between HHS, MCPS, and the police department to ensure that our communities are safe. And they're doing an amazing job. There's always room for improvement. But I think, especially as we're dealing with the budget, it's important to connect the dots. And this is why I thought it was a good thing to put it together and have the entire council, instead of having individual committees talking about this issue, bringing us all together helps. Again, as we dig into budget items, okay? With that said, everybody in front of us knows that this is not an opportunity to make budget requests. This is an opportunity to connect the dots and show that we are working in conjunction. And yes, we have more work to do, but having this conversation, I think, is vital. So with that, I'm gonna turn it to council staff to kick us off. Then I'm gonna have our panelists to explain their processes and how we're working together. And after they are done, then I'm gonna open it up for Q&A for all council members. So with that, please kick us off.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, Vice President Balcom, and council members. Today, the council will hear from 3 agencies charged with different aspects of youth safety at school and in the community about the programs and resources which are available in Montgomery County to protect the physical, emotional, and mental health of our youth. Each agency will discuss their individual and collaborative work, both preventative and reactive, and respond to questions from the council. Council staff would like to thank the panel here today and their colleagues behind the scenes who helped them prepare for today's discussion. Start off with the first.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Garibay-Aquino, Chief of Children, Youth, and Family Services within the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm joined by my colleague, Chief Martin, with our Behavioral Health and Crisis Services team, and collectively we'll be doing a quick overview of our programs that directly relate to youth safety and security, highlighting programs both in the community and those happening inside of schools. Next slide. So this is just a quick overview of kind of the topic areas or programs that we'll be discussing today. So I wanted to start with kind of going through an overview of our Youth Resilience Initiative. I believe we are currently probably in our 3rd iteration of this work through the years. This work, as many of you probably know, originally started with the uptick in youth car thefts happening throughout the county, and has kind of continued and been flexible to the needs of the community since then. Currently, we know that those numbers have gone down, but the work is still very much needed across the county. So we've shifted our focus from just addressing the problems or being reactive to taking a more proactive approach in terms of building strengths and opportunities for our youth. So when we think of youth resilience, what we mean is really that every young person is supported, empowered, and has equitable access to our county systems and services that they offer. So the work of our current initiative really aims to centralize the coordination of all of our youth-serving programs across the county by strengthening youth engagement, aligning both our data collection and our practices within our programs, so agencies are collectively working towards a common goal and outcome. One of our key updates or one of our key accomplishments to date so far from past fiscal year is launching our youth data dashboard, and we'll go into a little bit more detail into that later. But we worked very closely with our county stat team to do this and our other teams within HHS as well. So this slide is an image of the screenshot of the homepage of our data dashboard, and it really includes publicly available data, both for state, and we also drill down to the MoCo level as well. The dashboard includes data from the U.S. Census, from the U.S. Behavioral Risk Survey System for Youth, from our youth tobacco survey, both at the CDC level, and we also have some local publicly available data from MCPS as well. So the dashboard contains data and trends related to injury and violence, youth risk behaviors related to tobacco or substance use, and a lot of socio-demographic data as well. So for the next few slides, we've pulled out a few data points to share. Wanted to start off just looking at mental health trends. We can go back if you don't mind. Looking at mental health trends for youth, both in middle school and high school. So from 2013 through 2022, I know it's not updated. It is federal data, so we're usually a few years behind. But we do see a downward or negative trend in students reporting kind of ill mental health, which I'm sure we're all aware of. From 2013 through 2022. So we go from about 20% of our middle and high school youth reporting feeling sad or hopelessness in the last 2 weeks, stopping usual activities. And about 10 years later, we go up to 30% of our students reporting that. In terms of substance use and risky behaviors, we do see a decrease in alcohol and cigarette use. It's also noted that we see that same decrease related to electronic vape use as well. Within MCPS, and I'm sure my colleagues here can speak to this as well, we have about a 92% graduation rate in 4 years, which is much higher than the state average. And 73% of our students enroll in college within 16 months after graduating. So also just some positive aspects as well. We can go to the next slide. So this graph shows high school students who reported not going to school because they felt unsafe at school. And this, again, is from our CDC data. So the average percent across the county of high school students reporting that they felt unsafe at school and did not go was about 7.1%. So these highlighted zip codes here are those areas where high schoolers reported higher than the county average. So basically anything over 7.1% is highlighted here. This next slide is a report of middle school students who reported witnessing violence at school. So again, the county average here was about 22% for our middle school students. And these highlighted zip codes, again, report those areas where middle school students are reporting higher than the average for the county. Finally, these two graphs show both middle and high school students who have reported being involved in a physical fight on school property one or more times within the past 12 months when this survey was taken in 2022. The average here is about 7% of middle school students reporting that they had been in a fight and 8% of high school students reporting that they had been in a fight in the past 12 months. And again, these highlighted zip codes just represent the areas where students are reporting higher than the average for the county. So the data dashboard includes lots of other data. Also want to be mindful that we can also stratify that data by race, ethnicity, by grade, by location, and we would expect to see, some more differences and trends over time as well. But the youth or the data dashboard will allow the user to go in and do that and look at those trends across socio-demographic factors as well. The goal is really for our team, and once publicly available, our community partners, to use the information in this data to really help guide where we strategize our programming efforts, where we want to see our outcomes, where we hope to make a change. And I think the data dashboard was kind of helping us get the baseline for that as we continue the work. One of the outcomes of our past Youth Resilience Initiative meeting was establishing various work groups. So I want to talk a little bit about our safety work group. So this is a work group comprised of leaders across different county agencies. Some of them are listed here. And we've already started kind of working on shared goals related to safety for youth spaces, mostly in communities, homes, and our youth kind of public spaces as well. So the idea here is for the group to work towards addressing safety concerns. One of the kind of major takeaways and an incident that I'll talk a bit about later is the Rio Youth Takeover that happened a few weeks ago. So following that event, it kind of sprung up on us within a few days. Our team was able to coordinate. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But as an outcome of that, what we wanted to do across different agencies was come together, talk about how we responded collaboratively, talk about ways that we can move forward with some type of strategy in the event that this happens again. So that's one of the issues that that group will focus on. Now moving towards the programming that our team is doing directly in-house with our Community and Youth Violence Prevention Team, formerly known as PYD, our two main programs that address youth safety and security is our outreach network, so both our street outreach network and our school outreach network, and our safe space program. So these programs really focus on proactively supporting youth before they become involved in violence or before criminal behaviors occur. The Street Outreach Network program works by building trusted relationships between our youth, between our outreach workers, between the community. And the goal is really, again, to redirect those negative behaviors and turn those behaviors into things that are more constructive, more healthy plans for our youth. The Safe Space program works to fill both a geographic and service gap for high-risk youth. It provides a consistent, kind of constant place where youth and young people can go to get support, to access resources, and to get the mentorship as well. And you'll see here to the right of the screen just the number of youth served in each of those programs last year to date. This year, just want to be mindful for those FY26 data, that's only up until February. So we are on track again to kind of meet the same number of youth that we served previously as well. So in terms of the target communities that both of these programs work in, this is a quick breakdown of the various communities across the county where our team works and engages directly with youth and their families, sometimes directly in their community. So we do have a presence across the county. In addition, it's also important to note our contracts that we have that our team has oversight of within our Community and Youth Violence Prevention and Intervention program as well. These also speak directly, or the outcome is really geared at youth safety and lowering youth violence as well. So we have a contract with Imagination Stage, which is our OMA program, and this provides culturally relevant and proficient recreational activities for youth, and gives youth a chance to express themselves through creative arts. And the focus here is really on a healing-centered approach. We have our gang prevention program through LAYC, which provides some of those GED preparation, job readiness skills. We have a therapeutic rec and for student ambassador mentorship with 480 Club. This really focuses on community engagement, positive role modeling, and violence prevention. And then finally, we have our youth opportunity centers, which is currently conducted through Identity. These are really centers where youth can come, they can receive diversion and prevention services, and they're really focused on youth who are at risk of being gang involved or who are also gang involved. So I just wanted to close out my portion of the presentation with going through a few real life examples of how our team has coordinated collectively with MCPS and MCPD as well. So our Street Outreach Network responded promptly back in February to the Wooten High School shooting event that happened. We were able to coordinate 2 response teams immediately, one that directly worked with the victim and their families, a second that worked with the offender and their families as well. And the main goal here was to prevent any form of retaliation that would have occurred after the event happened. The team is also providing, or did and continues to provide, ongoing school supports, including daily check-ins with students, mediation services, and group-based interventions as well. And it's also important to note that the plan is to continue these services through the summer as well. So we've worked directly with MCPS to ensure that we have access to facilities and we can continue those services over the summer. This is just kind of a breakdown of the different partners that we had in that initial response and continue to have in the response. So our outreach network, providing the services, providing an immediate services to family, our partners with BHCS, who also provided mental health support. We have our Bridges to Wellness program, which is now within BHCS and was also called upon to provide referrals to our families involved. And of course, our colleagues with MCPS, who worked very closely with our SUN team on site to ensure that meetings with administrators happened. They assisted the families with return to school planning. And then finally, members within our community and the families of both the victims and the assailants as well. This next example is a Down County example from, I believe, fall 2025. So our team, our Street Outreach Network team, became aware of some ongoing violence that was happening outside of school, after school at Blair High School. So they worked directly with our MCPS team. We also coordinated directly with MCPD to provide support inside and outside of the school after school hours. So this involved direct coordination with MCPD so that they would know where our staff would be located. And also due to the kind of ongoing relationships that our SUN team has with a lot of the high school administrators and middle school administrators across the county, they were able to come in and give support both to our staff and to their staff and to students and help with those kind of ongoing issues as they came up after the event. And then finally, most recently, about 2 weeks ago, the Rio Youth Takeover. So our SUN team became aware of this event through social media, like many of them are kind of advertised these days. And after becoming aware of the event, they worked directly with our own HHS leadership, directly contacted MCPD, Gaithersburg Police, and also our BHCS team. A lot of this was happening over the weekend because I believe it was Easter weekend. They worked together to develop operational roles for our SUN team to ensure that SUN was really there just to help mitigate anything. They worked directly, again, with the City of Gaithersburg Police. They huddled, they came together, they shared a plan for how they would show up if the Youth Takeover event actually happened, and it did. And I would say that due to that coordination and collaboration among our team, the police, Gaithersburg Police, and our BHCS colleagues, we really had zero high-profile incidents for the Youth Takeover event. So I think this speaks to a lot of the work that we're doing on the fly when events happen, and the youth resilience effort paired with that is really working to kind of move to a more systematic way of how we operate with our other agency partners. But I'll pass it over to Monica Martin now.
Thank you, Chief Carrie-Aquino, and for highlighting some of those collaborations. And just to touch on other youth safety related information, I'll introduce myself. Absolutely. Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez. As my colleague said, I'm Monica Martin, Chief of Behavioral Health and Crisis Services at HHS, for the record. Thank you again. Starting off with kind of shifting to the promotion prevention end of things when it comes to youth safety, which is critically important. And there's a million examples of a million different things that all of our collective agencies and community-based partners and individual volunteers and advocates are doing around promotion and prevention. But I'm going to just touch on a few things here. With our Prevention and Harm Reduction Services team, the Be the One Youth Ambassadors program, again, one of various that are out there, but this is a youth-led, adult-guided program that's set up to empower young people to use their voice, to educate their peers and community on substance use, mental wellness, and suicide prevention. And they have driven and informed a social media campaign that now has hit over 1 million impressions across all of the social media platforms. This is a collaboration with MCPS, certainly with our MCCPTAs, other youth serving organizations, as I mentioned. And so those youth ambassadors, we've had 143 since 2021 do this work. They've reached over 3,000 youth via the presentations that they have done to their peers, and over 700 youth specifically with overdose response education. This is the first year that we've successfully expanded this effort to include middle schoolers in the pipeline of youth leadership to do this work. Again, it's just a great positive opportunity for so many of our youth to get involved and become the advocates that they naturally are around this. And again, the fact that youth are training other youth to administer Narcan when needed is a critical ongoing effort for us. Next slide. I also wanted to focus on, again, I'm not going to touch on outreach and education. There's some examples in the slide of the many ways that we do that to promote youth safety. But in terms of some targeted partnerships with MCPS, our adolescent substance use prevention program uses the evidence-based Botman life skills curriculum. There are other providers at MCPS and other entities that use this as well. But we have within this program, a module that kind of takes the best out of that evidence base to fit into add-on health curriculum related classes, or just by request at other schools. In fiscal year 25, we were at Forest Oak, Blair, Wooten, Good Counsel, a non-MCPS school in Neelsville Middle School, various others as well. But we've reached over 10,000 students with that program since fiscal year 23. And again, with a focus on mindfulness, coping strategies, and resiliency skills. And our post-surveys show exponential increases in the knowledge and attitudes towards substance use and mental health from this work. Our Trauma Services Division does presentations and workshops on domestic and teen dating violence and sexual assault. And then aside from the ASUP, the Adolescent Substance Use Prevention Program, we have other partnerships with Dr. Kara Grant at MCPS to step into certain schools and be the direct presenters for certain components of the health curriculum where there have been indicators of additional need there as well. Next slide. Thank you. Our child and adolescent community-based outpatient behavioral health services provides a range of services, but I want to highlight two of the specific efforts within that team. One is the home-based treatment team, and that is for families that are receiving services from Child Welfare Services. So these are highly vulnerable families, and that team does promote safe and stable families by reducing out-of-home placements and psychiatric hospitalizations and increasing family reunification rates, preventing disruptions in foster care placements, and increasing the number of youth at risk that are participating in therapy, which is critical to the stability of many youth that have experienced violence in the home and that are unfortunately maybe prone to repeat that cycle. We also have our Family Intervention Services effort, and that is a specific partnership with the Department of Juvenile Services. So all youth involved in this program are involved in the criminal justice system. The explicit goal of that intervention is to prevent detention or residential treatment. It is tough work. By the time youth are court involved, they usually have pretty significant offenses that they've been held responsible for. But in fiscal year 26 so far, we're close to a 70% success rate with youth being discharged from that program and successfully completing it. These are not large numbers of youth. We have 2 therapists that are working intensively with these families, but it is something we want to look at potentially scaling up and expanding in the future. Next slide. So now focusing on referrals to the Crisis Center from MCPS. The Crisis Center has supported MCPS students who are in behavioral health crisis for over 15 years through walk-in services that are available 24/7 at 1301 Picard Drive. And the Crisis Center, after conducting those assessments, does provide the youth and the family with next steps and resources and referrals as needed. And then also feedback to MCPS, so they're aware of how to support the student and the family. So highlights from these charts you see on the slide from fiscal year 22 through fiscal year 25, so kind of exiting the pandemic years, are that middle school students consistently make up the largest percent of referrals, from 43 to 48% of those. We have had a slight decrease over those years in referrals for males and an increase in a percent of referrals for females. We've had a decrease in the percent of African American students referred in fiscal year 25. So that was an average of about 23% from fiscal years 22 to 24 to under 15% in fiscal year 25. And a significant increase in the percent of Caucasian students referred. So that was about 15 to 19% from fiscal years 22 to 24 and closer to 30% in fiscal year 25. The first year that the highest percent of referrals were not from a Hispanic population was in fiscal year 2025. Next slide. This is just highlighting the dispositions after those assessments are conducted, and you'll see an increase in the percent of referrals. Forgive me, this is not the disposition. These are the presenting issues. You'll see an increase in the percent of referrals due to suicide threat in fiscal year 25, specifically to over 50%, but also a decrease in the percent of referrals due to self-injurious behaviors. Next slide. In terms of dispositions, which I was alluding to a little too early here in the slide deck, you'll note the trend that in fiscal year 2025, following the assessment, we have a much higher rate, over 80%, of students that are determined to not be at risk to self or others. We have a consistently low number of youth that are referred for partial hospitalization and involuntary hospitalization. But I'm going to move on to the next slide for now. In terms of other interventions, so we do have the crisis center is available 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for assessments for any residents in the county, as you well know. But we do have a specific subunit that is called the Child and Adolescent Assessment Service that does assessments that do not need to be crisis driven, do not need to be walk-in. They can also be by appointment or virtual. And this is a new unit that was reconfigured from a former unit in our service area starting last year. And so this fiscal year, you'll see that the presenting concerns through February are primarily around mental health, but also some for substance use and co-occurring conditions. And I will just note that these 3 therapists that are in this unit work very closely with both MCPS and the Department of Juvenile Services to connect students to the appropriate level of care, and they provide follow-up and case management for several weeks to ensure that connections to services are successfully completed and the family remains stable and not in crisis. Next slide. This shows the referrals that come out of those assessments from that subunit in the crisis center, and the first 3 bars on this chart are consistent with the trends you saw on the chart on the previous slide, but again showing here that over 50 youth in this fiscal year through February did go to voluntary hospitalization after those assessments, but again very few to involuntary. And then relatedly, we, with our MCOT outreach expanding in the fiscal year 2025 with the expansion of our teams, we have had more, of course, dispatches to support minors under the age of 18. So that has been 863 youth that have been served by our mobile crisis and outreach efforts. And in fiscal year 25, 15% of those dispatches were requested by MCPS. Next slide. I'm going to run quickly through these as a reminder of just the menu of school-based and linked behavioral health and related supports that exist on MCPS campuses or focused on certain MCPS schools. Obviously, our overall goal with this work is not just to provide treatment, but early identification and intervention, to integrate layered supports, to infuse more trusted adult relationships in the school community, and to be part of again, a large cross-system collaboration. Next slide. With the Bridge to Wellness initiative specifically that exists in 19 high schools that do not have high school wellness centers. In fiscal year 25, 614 youth received treatment services, with 92% of them improving or stabilizing their mental health functioning with evidence-based clinical scales that are utilized to measure that progress. And over 1,100 youth participated in youth development services, with 80% of them improving or stabilizing on a measure of positive youth development. Next slide. Our high school wellness centers, of course, have operated since 2007 and are deeply embedded in the schools they serve. They emphasize their role, of course, is in building protective factors and reducing risk factors and offering comprehensive services under one roof. These are greatly known as trusted spaces for students and families, and this is an initiative that is Chief Carrie Bellachino mentioned is in transition from children, youth, and families to behavioral health and crisis services at this time. Next slide. We have a behavioral health navigation service that was initiated by our cluster project service that is remaining in the children, youth, and families, but the behavioral health navigation component is really a centralized service that connects youth and family members, so any individual of the household, to behavioral health supports. These are licensed clinicians that all they do is that connection, and they kind of have every contact in the county that can exist with any behavioral health provider to make those connections. So this contributes to youth safety, of course, by rapidly connecting to services, reducing delays in care, and ensuring an appropriate level of intervention. This is a small effort, again, one that I wish we could scale, and we have 1.5 FTEs doing this work, but an excellent service for those families that receive it. And then new to the milieu of school-linked services this year is therapeutic mentoring, which is a structured program focused on social emotional development and skill building for youth needing additional behavioral and emotional support. It is not treatment, but it is focused on middle schools. That is the priority, given that is the school level that we have the fewest other on-site HHS supported or funded resources at this time. Next slide. Linkages to learning. In fiscal year 25, we had over 750 youth receiving therapy services, and that initiative with 88% improving or stabilizing their mental health functioning, and then over 4,500 household members benefiting from care management services to address those social determinants of health to support those youth in the future years. So over 80% of those did show an increase in family self-sufficiency. Next slide. Touching quickly on other youth safety focused interventions, our substance use disorder prevention and intervention program, which is currently operated by Identity, started out as a pilot in the Wheaton area. It did expand to a county-wide effort, and this is a specific outreach effort to engage with youth experiencing substance misuse or substance use disorders, and also includes very intensive whole family case management and wraparound supports. And our trauma services unit, which I mentioned earlier, does do counseling for children who've been sexually abused or who have witnessed violence crimes, again, supporting the effort to interrupt the cycle of violence in the family life cycle and beyond, as well as providing emergency shelter services for children who've experienced that violence directly. Next slide. This is my last slide. We'll pass it on. I just want to make sure I allude to what's on the horizon for us in increasing school-based behavioral health supports. Our local behavioral health authority has become, going into next fiscal year, a full community supports partnership, and is expecting through the Community Health Resources Commission to have an expansion of about 40% in funding to support, again, an increased footprint with MCPS in close coordination to do more work on campuses. And our Behavioral Health Crisis Stabilization Center at Picard Drive, which is breaking ground tomorrow for renovations. Do not come. You're welcome to have a hard hat tour at another time, but we'll celebrate when it opens in the fall as an expanded center that will serve youth. And this will be the first behavioral health crisis stabilization center in the state that serves youth. It'll become the only operating one, actually, in general, even for adults at that point in time in the fall. But it'll have dedicated youth space separate from adults to ensure age-appropriate care. It'll have 5 youth beds that are designed for short-term. Again, this is under 24-hour crisis stabilization, again, to support emotional regulation, de-escalation, privacy, and dignity. Have quiet rooms for calming and stabilization. It'll be very mindful of serving our neurodiverse youth population. And I look forward to hopefully celebrating with some of you in the fall when that's done. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I have lots of questions, but I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm gonna turn it to MCPS or the police department. Go ahead.
Ms. Martin is a hard act to follow. So thank you for having the police department here today to speak. I'm Assistant Chief Dave McBain. I oversee our Special Operations Bureau, which houses our Crisis Response and School Resource Division. I think the name of the division says a lot. We took Community Engagement Division, and we kind of looked at a focus of what is it that we're doing in the community. It's dealing with crisis, and we're also very much involved in our schools and our protection of our schools in a working relationship with MCPS. I will say that I think we have a very strong relationship with MCPS, not only at the school level but also at the executive level. I feel like I talk with Chief Jones more now than I did when he was my boss, and sometimes that's in the middle of the night. But we constantly are working together to keep our kids safe and do what we need to do to make sure that we have a good learning environment for our kids, and the relationship is strong. So the Montgomery County Police Department handles the lion's share of the schools and the clusters in the county. But I have to say, I want to point out that our allied agencies, specifically Rockville City, Gaithersburg City, Park Police, and the Sheriff's Department have all participated and helped us with coverage of our high schools and the clusters. I want to specifically give a thank you to Rockville City, who not only was provided us a CEO for Richard Montgomery High School, but they took Wooten High School this year as well. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I'm hoping that they will take Rockville High School and take all three of their schools, which would take the burden off of Montgomery County, especially with the staffing issues that we have. So that's been a great relationship, especially with Chief West leading Rockville City. And as Crown High School comes online in 2027, Gaithersburg City, we already have an agreement where they will be taking Crown. So they'll have Gaithersburg City and Crown. And then Wheaton High School, obviously, is Park Police, and the Sheriff's Department remains with Magruder. So the relationship is strong, and we have the schools covered, and we'll continue to keep our schools safe. I have with me today Captain Jerry McFarland. He's going to go over a lot of what we do. I would say probably the biggest addition to what our footprint in the schools is our behavioral threat and assessment support. And that has been responsible for a lot of threat assessment and actually knocking down the hype and hysteria that comes around some of these threats. They can very quickly dispel bomb threats or mass shooting incidents that really are kind of come out of mental health issues, and most often not even in Montgomery County. These threats come from all over the country, and the small team that we do have in this threat assessments unit works hand in hand with our schools and very quickly dispels a lot of the problems that come up in the schools. And finally, I just want to say that a lot of the focus is on what we're doing in the high schools. Our job, we realize, and the mission is not to arrest students. The mission is to be present, to be available, to be that another form of support that these students can go to, other than their school administrators and other employees in the school system. And Captain McFarland is going to talk about it, but these CEOs that work in these schools right now, the school year is just one part of what they do. The summertime, there's camps that they're involved in, outside of the school, after school programs that they're involved in. There's a lot of things that these men and women of the police department do. Most of it is self-generated. They've created these programs themselves, and we support much of what they do, and we try to support their ventures, even financially, if it comes to funding that they need to do these programs. But ultimately, our job is to give these kids a safe place to go to school and an avenue to feel safe while they are learning. I'm going to turn it over to Jerry McFarland.
Hello, and thanks to Chief McBain for basically covering everything that I had in my slides. However, my name's Captain Gerald McFarland. I'm the director of the Crisis Response and School Resources Division and have been for about 5 months now. So I'll go into some specifics that Chief McBain mentioned, but mainly what this highlights is that the CEO and MCPD are involved in the safety and of support of students throughout the school year. So if we could do next slide, thank you. So the community engagement officers, as it says, are really the front line for the school safety partnership. They work inside and around the schools every day. They provide daily school presence and support. And so they routinely, not only with the high schools, as he said, but visit the elementary and middle schools, monitor arrival and dismissal, and basically are a trusted contact for students and staff. And as it says, CEOs are assisting at schools with student conflicts, elopements, more and more frequently these days, parent-student issues, welfare checks, and other school safety concerns. As it relates to mentorship and positive youth development, CEOs organize and participate in Lunch Bunch at some schools. They host a leadership academy up at Fox Chapel Elementary School that runs most of the school year. And these reinforce leadership, responsibility, and positive behavior. And that'll be a theme in a lot of the programs that our officers run: leadership, responsibility, and positive behavior. We also have DARE instruction at numerous elementary schools around the county, and that is either multiple days a week or 1 day a week, depending on the needs of the attendees there. CEOs also assist with drug and alcohol awareness presentations and COPE trailer events, which is our community opioid prevention education trailer. And then they also assist with the law enforcement program at Edison High School. CEOs additionally help with students and family assistance, like safety planning, following some of the threats that Chief McBain mentioned. They're a point of contact with the school and other family systems. They also participate in mediation at some schools. And then they also participate in community events. They support career days, fairs, school safety meetings, public forums, PTA meetings as needs arise. They do take law enforcement action when necessary. And I'll read this just verbatim. While the CEO program is relationship-based and focused on prevention, CEOs also make criminal arrests when required by law and when safety cannot be achieved through other means. These actions are carefully assessed, coordinated with school administrators, and carried out to protect students and staff. Appropriate law enforcement ensures serious or dangerous behavior does not disrupt the learning environment and helps maintain safe, orderly schools. So overall, the CEOs provide that relationship-based policing and attempt to reduce escalation, improve trust, and that's what a lot of these, especially with the younger children, improves trust in them and supports safer environments. The second biggest way that we promote school safety is we have our annual Patrol Safety Leadership Camp, which they host about 100 rising fifth graders every year at a camp up in Thurmont. They learn about leadership again, teamwork, traffic safety awareness, and being a positive role model. And then additionally, they hire camp staff, which are 14 or 15-year-old county students who work with officers to accomplish the camp safety goals. We run the Safety Patrol program. So in addition to those 100 safety patrols that attend camp, there are approximately 40 to 50 safety patrols at each of the county's 137 elementary schools, bringing the number of safety patrols to about 6,500 per year, one of which was awarded Outstanding Safety Patroller in the country last year. We employ 185 crossing guards, which not only provide safe access for walkers in the morning and afternoon, but also support other county events. Automated traffic enforcement. All of the county school buses are equipped with cameras to capture images of red light or vehicles passing the stopped school bus. And then, as Chief McBain mentioned, our CEOs work very closely with the Behavioral Threat and Behavioral Solutions Unit. This is daily, multiple times a day, it seems, working, as he said, to quickly resolve and kind of tamp down rumors and other things that to prevent them from becoming a huge concern in the community. They do welfare checks, home checks, they speak with parents, they do consent searches when these threats are received. And most outcomes involve school-based or family-based plans, not a criminal action. MCPD's trauma-informed approach allows students to receive help without unnecessary justice involvement. Next. Some of the summer programs I want to highlight, and some of these are hosted by our CEOs, some of them are hosted by the district community resource officers. We have the Police Adventure Camp, which is drawn from, it's a partnership with HOC where students are selected both from up county and down county to participate in a multi-day camp visiting. They visited the Dulles Smithsonian Museum. They visit the FBI Museum. They talk about police procedures. They're also, my CEOs host the Youth on the Rise program, which is 2 week-long camps for 25 rising ninth graders. And then the 4th District Community Service Officer hosts a summer camp at the Wheaton Station where they select 25 high school students from the area to participate. Next slide. All right. So all of our CEOs and 99% of our patrol officers are crisis intervention trained. In addition, our CEOs have to participate in a 2-week training from the Maryland Center for School Safety prior to beginning as a CEO. And then all of them have an additional week-long in-service training where they talk about current events or challenges facing schools in the area. They receive behavioral threat assessment training. And then many of them are DARE certified to teach the DARE courses that I mentioned earlier. And then just to kind of wrap it up, MCPD school safety is preventative, relation-based, and collaborative. They provide essential expertise with the behavioral threat assessment. We offer year-round youth engagement and summer programs. The CEOs receive extensive training in addition to the regular training that officers receive, and community engagement is a core component.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our final panel, MCPS.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. Just some brief introductory remarks while the slides are being pulled up for MCPS. As you can see, this effort to keep our kids safe in our community takes many hands. We're grateful for the partnerships that we have with HHS and MCPD, as well as our municipal police departments. We have locked arms in the service of our children, and we just really appreciate their collaborative partnership, and you've seen that showcased so far. I think it's important in the context of some really significant events that have happened recently to share some philosophical standing points before we jump into some of our data, which I think is really important. There is no one solution to supporting safety in our community, especially for our young people. And though the school system really represents 1/3 of our children's hourly commitment to life, and only that for half of a year, 180 days, we recognize the pivotal role that the school system plays in influencing the behaviors of young people. And we're proud of some of the progress that we've made in a short period of time, but also concerned. And so we offer really a portfolio approach to addressing a lot of the concerns that we have. This has been mentioned by every single person so far, the importance of relationships. And in schools in particular, the relationships between peers and the relationships between the adults that serve our children is absolutely critical. There are effective and ineffective strategies for safety. There's a sliding scale for sure of strategies that are more effective versus some that are less effective. By far, the most effective strategy at improving safety is having adults present, so fully staffed schools, and having those adults have a positive relationship with young people. And so I know that the board president is here to offer some additional remarks, but I did just want to thank you for this opportunity to share some of our data and to answer some of your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Good afternoon, President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, Vice President Malcolm. So nice to see you all and colleagues. When we had this conversation with President Fanny Gonzalez. It was about time that we had a holistic conversation about safety and security in general, because this is an issue that it should be shared by all of us, not just by MCPS, not just by Montgomery County Police, or just by HHS, because we do have a lot of times where there's many intersections. Can we do a little bit better in communication? I think so. And I think that's part of the conversation as well. But I think at the end of the day, when we look at all the services so on, although they sound amazing, you can see we're only reaching a very small fraction of our students. And I think the question is, how can we collaborate better, even with other agencies and nonprofits, to make sure that we are hitting a broader spectrum? So just to give you an idea, we have about 50,000 just high school students in Montgomery County Public Schools. So I think everything needs to be put in perspective. With my other hat, and somebody who has done juvenile justice for years and advocated, and probably is one of the few people in this room who ran an after-school program for many years, where I actually met Ms. Martin, a guy youth services in our younger days when we're just out of school. And that's right, and we were gonna fix the world. And we're still young. Sadly, we're still seeing those same issues today. And it's been a while. And when I hear, the issues with drug addiction and so on, we still don't have a residential program in Montgomery County for our kids, for our young adults. So they still have to go out of the county. And I hear this a lot from parents, which is a huge burden for those parents who don't have transportation to be able to do that. So we still have some barriers that we need to work on. But with that, I'm very thankful that we're having this conversation today, as we should. And I look forward to working with all of you and with our partners at the table to ensure that we are doing the best that we can for the best interests of the children in our county.
So good afternoon, Council President Fanny Gonzalez and members of the council. It is great to be with you all again. Marcus Jones, Chief Safety Officer for MCPS. I just want to briefly speak on some strategic planning and some of the issues that we have really been working with and much of our structure, just to give you a brief oversight of that, and then I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Moran, for him to provide more information on data. This year, our work is focused on strengthening consistency across all schools and how we prepare for incidents, how we respond in the moment, and how we recover afterwards. We have prioritized building strong systems, setting clear expectations, and giving staff practical tools they can actually use. We have also focused on making sure those expectations look the same across all schools. Today, we share an overview of the progress made this year. We'll also walk through that data as I spoke of and where we are focusing next. Our work is directly aligned to the district's priority of maintaining safe, supportive, and well-managed environments. Another key measure is our ongoing review of serious incident trends so we can adjust supports where needed. As a result, we are seeing stronger readiness across our schools. We are also seeing more consistency in how schools respond. Next slide, please. This year, we implemented the standard response protocol district-wide, so all schools are using the same language and actions. We completed safety audits at every school level to better understand what is working and where support is needed. Staff training was expanded. This included beginning of the year training on emergency response, as well as spring refreshers for staff, security teams, and emergency teams. We also continued upgrading safety technology and addressing maintenance needs across the schools. Throughout the year, we have partnered with the state's attorney's office to offer 2 types of student safety assemblies to all secondary schools: Speak Up, Save a Life, and Working Together to Keep Schools Safe and Gun-Free. Looking at the data, drug-related incidents remain the largest category. Physical altercations have decreased over time. Weapon-related incidents have remained relatively consistent, but there are still some serious concerns centered around weapons in our schools. Moving forward, we are focusing on strengthening our parent-student reunification planning, which is vitally important in cases of emergencies. Next slide, please. Again, we are focused on these school safety audits as noted. These are very important because they provide us with very effective feedback on how safety is being implemented at each of the schools. These include walkthroughs with our principals and security staff so we can see practices in real time. We were able to identify what is working well and where additional support is needed. What is coming is we are actually launching digital mapping for all of our school facilities. That will be occurring within the next few months, and this will help a better response for our public safety partners, such as our law enforcement agencies, fire rescue service, as well as the Office of Emergency Management in the event of emergencies. That is an important tool for us that we will be moving forward. Next slide, please. Again, this year we continue to build out technology that supports both day-to-day safety and real-time response during incidents. We have continued to upgrade cameras, access control systems, and vape detection sensors across the schools. These systems are not just installed, but actively monitored and maintained to ensure they are functioning when needed. In regards to our cameras, we are upgrading older camera systems, improving in our infrastructure, and adding the new cameras that meet current digital standards, improving reliability, image quality, and our ability to effectively monitor and respond to safety concerns. We have, again, done things such as provide our security assistants with iPads as they are on patrol, and they can monitor cameras real time, get real-time notifications about vape sensors. We will also be working to identify doors to install sensors to strengthen better access control, to address elopements. That is a major issue as noted by our police partners earlier, but it also addressed to make sure that our schools are secure and that unauthorized visitors are not being allowed into our buildings. Together, these tools improve visibility across our campus. They also support quicker decision-making and allows teams to respond more effectively in real time. Next slide. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Moran.
Thank you, Chief Jones. Peter Moran, Chief of Schools, Montgomery County Public Schools. Great to be here with you today. So we're going to get into the data here a little bit. Just to point out, you'll notice on the left-hand side you have the raw number of infractions that have occurred. On the right-hand side, you have the percentage, and then, of course, you have a 3-year trend here that we're going to be looking at. So this table looks at student behavior over time to support the identification of trends, to focus our coordinated efforts across offices as well as across departments. As you can see, the 3-year trend demonstrates a decline in fighting attack on others. We attribute this decline to increased supervision, an intentional focus on each student accessing a trusted adult, broadening restorative approaches, and increasing expectations through the code of conduct. While we've seen this decline, we have seen an increase, which has been noted today, around drug-related incidents, which remains our largest category. This signals the need to emphasize the importance of proactive prevention through health education, starting at the elementary school level. Active partnerships with organizations and agencies that can provide resources and direction to services, and school-based access to services and supports. These responsive supports are provided through Identity and Tree of Hope, which includes peer substance abuse mentoring and family services, as was mentioned earlier, and the Recovery Addiction Program is supported as an alternative school internally. And substance abuse support is available at 19 high schools through our Bridge to Wellness centers. This table also demonstrates that weapons-related incidents have remained steady, and we continue to intensively monitor this area closely given the level of risk. With each of these data points, we review these trends alongside serious incident data and school-level reports to guide supports, target interventions, and align resources effectively. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at it by school level, and we have elementary, middle, and high. And so when we break this data down by school level, we see clear differences in both volume and type of incidents. It's important to note that incidences are reported by location and not always by student involvement. For example, an item found on an elementary campus may not involve an elementary school student. Similarly, a false alarm or bomb threat can be a fire alarm that is activated and the fire department comes to that building. That could happen after hours, it could happen during school hours. High schools account for the largest number of incidents overall. This includes higher numbers related to drugs and physical altercations. Middle schools show similar patterns but at a lower scale. This helps us identify opportunities for earlier intervention before behaviors escalate at the high school level. Elementary schools have fewer incidents overall, but still require attention to areas such as supervision, access control, and early behavioral supports. As you know, one thing that we strongly consider is only a quarter of our elementary schools right now have school-based security staffing. So that's another thing that we certainly take into consideration when we look at this data. This breakdown allows us to tailor training, staffing, and support based on the specific needs of each level rather than taking a one-size-fits-all approach. But you'll see in our next steps, we're revising categories for the internal serious incident reports to be able to pull the data to show the level of accuracy that we're going after. At this time, Mr. Chief Jones, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
We're ready for questions.
Okay. We're ready to open up for questions. Yep, thanks.
Good. I was so excited. Okay. This was honestly, if anything, it shows that there is true collaboration here. Okay, so I want to start there. And I think for me, the best example that I can give is when I joined the county council, and it was mentioned by the HHS team. When I joined the county council, I was facing this fentanyl crisis happening mostly in my district. And I do want to appreciate County Executive Mark Elrich for working with me very, very closely to ensure that we will get identity. And I want to thank every single one of my colleagues for supporting this initiative to ensure that we will have a nonprofit, in this case it was Identity, to work with HHS, the police department, and the school district to ensure that kids dealing with fentanyl will get the help that they needed, and also understanding what was happening in the family to also help them. And I think that's a great example. And to be completely honest, was is the reason why I wanted to have this meeting together, because for me, that relationship, what happened there worked. The level of number of kids and so you all know, many of these kids I knew walking around my neighborhood and going to stores and stealing and so forth just to buy fentanyl. And probably a year and a half after we kicked off the program, I had lunch with some of these same kids that were going through this phase in their life. And looking at their faces, it was day and night, how the impact of this program helped them. And I tell you, I met with Montgomery County police officers from District 4, that police district, constantly. And I want to give a shout out to Commander David Smith, because he and I we're probably talking at least once a day. Okay, same thing with Identity through Diego and Ms. Morales. And MCPS, meeting with school principals. So I think that what happened there kind of opened my eyes to see the importance of having those relationships among different agencies to make a difference in our families. So I wanted to say that. The second thing, and this is where the question / comment. I have a lot of respect from the Street Outreach Network, the SON program. These guys are amazing, mostly because all the work that they do on prevention, and I do believe the county needs to, we're doing great work, but we need to do more work to ensure that we have more coordination and resources needed, and I'm not talking about the budget, to ensure that more of these preventive activities happen so our kids don't get into trouble, right? And that means coordination with our police department, but also with HHS and the school system to identify events where we know trouble is coming. And I think the last example that the HHS team gave us is great. How you knew about an incident that was about to happen through social media, and you worked with all the resources that you have in hand to make that prevention happen. And we need more of that. And frankly, that speaks highly of the work that we do in Montgomery County, that a lot of people have no idea, okay? And that's another reason why we're putting together this work session, just to connect and to say what we're working on. And yes, what other things we're not doing, but how can we as a community get there, right? So my question is, and this is also understanding, I do a lot of work with different schools within my district, okay? Lots of it. I spend a lot of time in schools. The role of principals in schools is critical, okay? So I need to understand better how that MOU that we have with the school system and the county in relationship with the police and HHS, how can that be improved with the idea of being more proactive in prevention? I'm one of those folks who think that you may have all the metal detectors that you want and all the technology that you talked about. That's great, but at the end of the day, it's about relationships, and it's about the school principal setting an example and ensuring that school staff have a really good relationship with the students and understand, well, if this kid, there's something up with him or her, what can I do to help? And what can I do to connect with our HHS services and so on to prevent situations? So that's a question that I have. I don't know if you have a comment out of that, but go ahead.
I think it's actually maybe central to this conversation. And granted, schools only see the children less than 50% of the calendar year, and that only 7 hours out of the day. But at the same time, have tremendous impact on the friend groups that kids connect with, their activities outside of school. It's all connected. And so, to your point, we're in a human services business. All three agencies that are presenting to you today. And so the relationships that they have with one another is just as important as the relationships that the kids have with the adults in the building, and how we're able to leverage those resources. So to that point, anytime that we have humans, you're going to get variation in terms of output. And sometimes that's wonderful and presents very favorably. And sometimes it's not great, because when you are missing some critical service. So I think it would behoove us, as we're reevaluating future MOUs, to think about what the core services are and to articulate what those core services are, and to work in concert that this is the base core services that we're trying to connect with. Because unfortunately, with the abundance that we have in Montgomery County, sometimes because we have so many things going on, it's almost difficult to know what tool to apply to the right situation.
I agree with you. Thank you so much for those remarks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we're going to proceed. We're going to open it up to colleagues. and the clock is on. Just because 5 minutes each, just because if we don't do it, then somebody can take for 20 minutes, and then we're not giving the opportunity to everybody. So I am, you know me, I don't need to go there. I'm gonna follow that clock. And if we finish the round and there are other questions and we have reasonable amount of time left, we can do round 2. Okay, I said my piece. We're gonna start with the Chair of Public Safety Committee, Council Member Sidney Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I heard that 5-minute rule, and I'm going to try my best to come in under budget. First off, thank you to the Council President for having this discussion. We need to have this discussion. And I want to thank the panel for their update and for everything that you're doing. Ms. Gerbe Aquino, you talked about the safety work group, and I sincerely appreciate all that hard work as well. We keep talking about the relationships, and we need to thank the various nonprofits and certainly Street Outreach Network with a group that works directly with their youth. But on the first slide on your presentation, it says youth safety and security, and to me, that's a good way to say that. But then in other slides, you had community youth violence prevention and intervention program. You know where I'm going. And I believe that we need to be give a more positive discussion on that. I don't believe that any youth should believe that they're there because of a violence prevention. I believe we need to have that same young person realize that they're there because we're concerned about their safety and security. That's something that it struck me as you were reading. And as far as the school resource officers, and I certainly have seen them over the years, and we can call them community engagement officers, and I think that fellow named Shakespeare talked about a rose by any other name is going to smell as sweet. I think it certainly doesn't matter what they're called, it matters what they do. And in many cases, if a child sees a police officer during a time of crisis, if they're called to their home and somebody has to leave because of domestic violence or whatever horrific event, that child has a very negative thought about that police officer, whether it's fair or unfair. But if we can see them on a pleasant type of situation, and you talked about DARE, you talked about school safety patrols. I've been on that school safety patrol committee probably 35 years now. How in the world I got on it, I don't remember, but I'm glad that I am. But we need to make certain that our youth see our police officers during a happy time as well, during a pleasant time. And we also have to talk about the truancy prevention program that the state's attorney is working on. I know Ms. Rivera-Oven is very familiar with that as well. And that in itself, not only does it make certain that those young people come to school, but it reminds them, because there's a mentor involved, it reminds them how important they are to someone else, and what that means. So I'm going to come in under budget. I just think it needs to be reminded, we all need to be reminded, that it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes that same village to keep them safe. Thank you very much, Council President.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment, Council Member. And I will say we've had these discussions both internally and with our partners as well. I do want to just make a note that in terms of our programs that are directly interfacing with the youth and in the communities, we do not go by that name at all. That is more so just our internal programming. Moving from PYD to the name that it is now speaks more to the work that our team is doing, but the youth, our community, they know us as Street Outreach Network or Safe Space. With that said, there may be some, language maneuvering we can do with it, but I appreciate your comment.
Anybody else? No? Okay, that was very good. Thank you so much. Next, we have Council Member Andrew Fritzen.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The coordination, collaboration is really heartening to see here. It was more important to experience the last couple of weeks. We've had some really alarming circumstances, Bradley Hills Elementary School, WJ, Whitman, among others. And I saw that coordination firsthand, was in the middle of it in many ways. Just want to express my appreciation for that. I think we have more work to do, clearly, but the level of communication is improved from where it has been in the past, and I do appreciate it. We had an arson and a threat of a school massacre at an elementary school. We had a threat to a high school of a school shooting where my understanding is there were only 20% of students showed up to Whitman High School on Friday. The school was empty. Parents, students, the community are palpably scared. And I think it's our job to really step up to demonstrate that we are going to keep them safe. So that's really what this conversation is about. I appreciate the work that has been done, but I do think that there is more work that we need to do. So I have some questions about the current CEO model and how it comports to best practices, and would also like to understand if we were to make a change and were to return an officer into high schools on a permanent, ongoing basis, do we have the resources to do that? What would that look like? And do we have the resources, and what would it look like to have adequate coverage as is required by state law for our middle and elementary schools? Because one of the things that we saw this past week was we had a threat of a school massacre to an elementary school and concerning situations and threats to the same cluster's high school. And that presented a challenge and a concern among parents of whether or not their kids were going to be safe. And as a result, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of parents that did not feel safe to send their kids to school. And some of the students who told their parents they refused to go to school. And I heard from a lot of them. So I just would like an understanding of that.
Yep, I can start. So in my opening statement, I'd indicated that we're very fortunate to have some very strong allied partners. So to answer your question, yes, we can cover the high schools with a school resource officer in every high school. And that's along with our allied partners. But something
and then what would that look like for the adequate coverage for then the middle and the elementary schools? So I think that's a key part of this too.
Well, so then the conversation has to be had is that officer exclusively going to walk into that school and stay there all day long? And I don't think that's what we're planning to do, or what we envision we would do. We would still have some oversight and watch on our middle schools and elementary schools. However, we can push some of the less serious incidents at our middle and elementary schools to our patrol. But we would not want to burden patrol with going to the schools as little as possible. Going into, when you look at our staffing situation, we can't cover all the schools. We just can't.
I appreciate it. I think that we need to look at revisiting these issues. As I have said consistently before, police officers should not be involved in school discipline, never should have been,
Nope.
and aren't, as according to policy. So we need to make sure that that is followed through upon. But I do think we should address that, and I would like to follow up on that. A follow-up question on the school safety audits. We saw this and some concerning dynamics with some of these issues. WJ has some emerging issues that need to be addressed, or other incidents as well. How is the process of a school safety audit communicated to parents, to elected officials, to the public? How does that process work? And are there any changes that you expect to have happen based on school audits occurring? Because there's been an ongoing concern that there's a understanding that a school audit for safety might be happening, but no understanding what the results are, whether or not there's any follow through on it. We've heard this at BCC, we've heard this now at WJ, we've heard this at Magruder, we've heard this at a number of different locations.
Yeah, so really quick, back to your SRO question, and I kind of want to answer your question with a question and ask if there's anything specific in what we're currently doing that wasn't being performed before, or vice versa, that we should be attentive to. I think that that's really a good guide for us, because to Councilmember Katz's point arose by any other name. I think the operationalization of what we're trying to do is what is really important, not necessarily what it's called. I will say the partnership between the police departments, plural, and the school system, I don't think has ever been as strong as it is right now. So I think that this is a great inflection point and an opportunity that if there are features that council would like for us to be attentive to, that this is a good opportunity to think through what some of those features might be. You brought up a really good point that I don't think a lot of people understand and really does need to be elevated, is that law enforcement that's in our schools at any point is not there to enforce school rules. They're there to enforce the laws of the United States, the state of Maryland, and Montgomery County. And that enforcement of school rules is really the responsibility of school administration and the school staff. So thank you for elevating that. I think there's a lot of confusion when that comes to pass. In terms of audits, it may not be in the best interest of student and staff safety to disclose the findings of every audit and some of the materials that come from audits because they may introduce vulnerabilities to bad actors in the community. And we're very sensitive to that. As a matter of fact, when we have to disclose something to the Board of Education for funding and for support, it is done in closed session because that sensitivity does introduce a vulnerability that we would not want bad actors to be aware of. So we work through that. We do have a process, and I'll certainly let Mr. Jones elaborate on that. But it is a team that goes through and evaluates everything from physical safety to adherence to practices, following the student code of conduct and other things as well. It's not just a one-time event either. There's follow-up at each school. We did a very comprehensive review for the first time in a really long time, actually in living memory, where we went through our secondary schools and are now working through our elementary schools for the first time in a long time. Mr. Jones, if
Yes, and I would also add that when we have done our audits, we have communicated with our communities, even though they may not necessarily feel like they've been satisfied with what we provided them, but we have provided them with a vast overview of what we discovered and some of the changes and the improvements that we made as a result thereof. There's been no school community that we've done an audit at that we've not done that. I followed up with the BCC community. We've had several discussions with them. Same thing with the Magruder community, where we've had face-to-face discussions with them in regards to some of their concerns about their safety. And again, we've not only shared it with them, we shared it with staff and the students. And I think, again, Dr. Taylor makes a great point. We have had situations where people have utilized information that's been shared publicly to actually incur other threats to our schools that have put people in fear unnecessarily. And so these are the things that we are very sensitive about when it comes to making sure that, again, we are not going to put anybody in, we don't want to put anyone in danger in that regard, as we are moving forward with providing the best safety protocols and strategies in order to be able to keep our children safe every day.
Appreciate it. I have a response to the superintendent's question, but I will hold on that since I'm out of time.
Yes. Thank you so much. Important questions. Councilmember Will Jawando.
Thank you. I appreciate this. Good news is I'll have a couple more bites at the apple because you guys will be before the ENC and ENC HHS committee in various stages. April 27th basically is the whole day. We do MCPS, safety and security first, and then HHS programs later in the day. So those who want more are welcome to come back. But I really appreciate the Council President for pulling this together. We could have had recreation hanging off the edge here too, you know, as far as the fact that it's a when we're talking about safety and security with our kids, there's so many agencies, libraries, just underscoring the point that we all have a role to play. And park and planning, there you go. So we go down the list. So I do want to just acknowledge that. A couple things I'll bring up. The Youth Resilience Initiative, we've kind of had some stops and starts with this, and it's been a point of pain. I know we've had transition in staff and leadership and who's going to do it, and so I'm just really happy to hear that we have it and it's together, and I'm interested to hear more about the work group and when it's meeting and what the goals are, because I just think it's someone has to be the honcho of the work and bring all the coordinating folks together and have a plan and data and metrics. And, for example, student X has an issue. They're going to touch multiple points, and we have to have a way through data sharing and agreements to make sure we're not dropping them if they have an interaction with MCPD or at the school or at a rec center. We have to get better at that. And I think this initiative is a way of ultimately helping to pull that off. And the dashboard is a great start as well. I am very concerned with the increase in drug-related infractions, and want to probe more on that as we move forward, of why we're seeing that, what we're seeing, how we're responding to it. Obviously, our students with mental health issues, there's certainly is a connection there, but that's probably not all of it. I'm glad fights are down. I am also concerned about arrests. In some fluctuation, and one of the charts that's in the packet but was not in the presentation, for Black and African American students, there were 11 arrests in 23-24, 1 arrest in 24-25, but already up to 13 as of March of this year, a 70% increase, and we're not even halfway through the year, or we're towards the end of the year. We have a couple more months. So I'm really concerned about that, and I want to know what the reasoning there, or not the reasoning, but go ahead, I'll ask that, and if you could just be concise, because I only have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so this is Montgomery County Police Department data. Otherwise, we would not be able to report it to you because the numbers are so small. This represents 1/10,000th of our students in terms of real data, and 1/3 of the data that you see presented is actually one person. So it's duplicate data, it's not unduplicated data. So
13, so 3 or 4 of those arrests is one person.
Correct.
All right. And I think, so that's great
So-
context. I think we need to provide that in the context of what we were seeing 5 years ago.
Right,
When
which
we-
is very different.
When we made
Yeah.
a change in systems, right?
Yeah.
When Chief Jones was in a different seat, we saw a much higher level of arrests, and we switched to the model, and things have changed. So while the percentage is higher, I think that context is important.
Yeah, and keep in mind, again, you're talking about single digits in a school system
155,000.
of 150,000 students.
Right.
And if you're looking for context, the national suspension rate for students in schools is about 5%. It's 7% at secondary level and about 3% at the elementary level. Our suspension rate is 0.2%.
Yeah.
So
also important context.
We are definitely in the tail of the bell curve, in the right place. Doesn't mean we're not concerned. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges. But we're definitely sitting in a positive space relative to other communities who are really struggling with this issue.
The challenge of Montgomery County is that we are our own standard in many cases, so we always have to strive for continuous improvement. The last thing I'll say on the SRO CEO thing, I think the public is widely confused that the cluster model was basically what was in place before in the SRO model. One police officer had to respond to middle and elementary schools in the same cluster before. So this idea we're returning to something is not correct. And former Chief Jones was quoted in the paper saying they're really pretty much the same thing, except we don't have the patrolling of hallways. Some of the things we worked hard and negotiating the board worked on. I think the numbers show we're heading in the right direction. Always more work to do, but appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead.
Chief.
I would just like Captain McFarland just to highlight something that he's been working on that I think pertains to your drug issue. Good.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the drug arrest with the recategorization.
Not my drug issue, but the
I'm
issue
sorry.
of
Yes, sir.
you know, just I just want to make
the
sure.
drug issue you
I've been
referenced.
accused of many things.
The drug issue that you referenced has changed dramatically since the recategorization of cannabis. And the schools do handle in-house most of the drug-related events that occur at schools. But I, in my new position, realized that the police department used to make a lot of arrests for drugs and drug paraphernalia, alcohol, and those many of those arrests were diverted DJS to the crisis center, to the program called SASCA, and now the CAS that you referenced. Our numbers of drug arrests for first-time offenders, possession, et cetera, are way, way, way down across the department. But I'm looking to, and I've been working with HHS and DJS to restart that deferral program before DJS that kind of went away during COVID, when a lot of some of the programs went away and the law changed. So we're trying to bring that back.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
That was a great set of questions and information. Next, Council Member Kate Stewart.
Great. Thank you all. I appreciate the presentation today. Thank you to the Council President. I just want to recognize and really thank the departments and community partners for all the great work. And we know there's still more to do. I'm going to start with Chief Garibay-Aquino and Chief Martin. I, like my colleagues, are really glad to see the Youth Resilience Initiative move forward. And I do appreciate the word resilience and this iteration of it. And excited to see the dashboard. And I know you're starting, things are just starting to get up and running on this. But I'm curious to build on what Councilmember Jawando was just saying in terms of the potential for the dashboard as well as bringing community partners together. Because as I look at the maps and the potential here, what I'm thinking is, how do we overlay the government services we provide, like where our street outreach network is, where we're seeing the instances, where we see our nonprofit partners already on the ground doing this work. Because as you know, and you all were so helpful when we did the mental health work last year, what we heard from a lot of families and young people is we had families and young people who were receiving services in our community, but lots of times the service providers didn't even know they were serving the same family. And then we had families and young people who didn't know where to turn to for services. So I just wanted to know, where do you see the potential as we're moving forward?
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And you've said a lot within there. I think the focus that we're trying to focus on now is starting with all of our county agencies to ensure that we're on the same path, that we're speaking the same language, that we're monitoring the same outcomes. In addition to having the data dashboard that hasn't been launched publicly yet, but I do have a team that's working kind of on a how to use document that we can share with the public when it is launched publicly, in terms of what data should we, what trends are we looking for? How can we work with community partners that we're aware of, just so that we're all kind of working from the same information. I will say the work has been slow to start because it is really just my team who's doing it on top of all of their other items that they're working on. But we have established these work groups. We do have a data work group that also includes colleagues from MCPS, REC, my team, MCPD as well, and these are the same questions that we're bringing in a larger group, and hopefully we'll have some answers to soon. But I will say the focus has been really on coordination with our internal county agencies before we push it to the broader community.
Great, thank you. And also, I just want to say congratulations on beginning the renovation of the Behavioral Health Crisis Stabilization Facility for Youth. I'm very excited to see that move forward, and I know you all are as well. I have a question for, I think next is the police department, if I still have a bit of time, on the CEO training that was highlighted. It talked about de-escalation, maintaining a positive school climate, constructive interactions with students, disability and diversity awareness, attention to racial and ethnic disparities. I'm particularly curious if, and you can share it here or we can follow up at another time, attention to racial and ethnic disparities and disability and diversity awareness. What is going into that type of training, and what are we talking to our CEOs about?
In addition to the training that all police officers get on those topics, this is a mandated training by the Center for School Safety, the Maryland Center for School Safety. They're the ones that require the 2 weeks before and the annual 1 week of in-service training. So they come up with the topics.
So that's what they go through. Is there anything in addition that we do here, because we are Montgomery County?
Our police officers, myself included, receive extensive annual training on many of those topics in our in-service online modules and in-service training at the police academy.
Great. Well, I think given also just the times we're living in and everything, it would be great to be able to talk a little bit more about how we're thinking about those topics and engaging with our youth in our communities who we know from the data from HHS are experiencing a great deal of mental health strain right now, a great deal of trauma, and how we want to build positive relationships with law enforcement, with our youth community, but we also know what they're experiencing right now and how we can work on all of those relationships together. And I will get back in the queue.
Do you have a response? No? Okay, just want to make sure to give you your time. Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for assembling this stellar team. You know, it takes a village to raise a child, and each of you are leaders in those respective efforts. And another leader who's not represented here per se, certainly by the school board, are our principals, right? In the nearly 211 schools that we have, principals are looked up to. Principals are sought for their guidance, and ultimately they know their schools probably better than anyone else. And so, Mr. Superintendent, for you and the school system, what autonomy, big picture question, what autonomy do our principals have in keeping their individual schools safe and making sure that their students and their educators are protected? Because as I've been traveling around the county, recognizing there's a lot of diversity of thought and lots of different needs as well.
Thank you for that great question. And as the principal of the principals, I'm
Fair
delighted to tell you that one of the characteristics that we look for in hiring principals is good judgment. And we are really trying to find expert educators who understand children, understand parents, understand communities, and understand dimensions of instruction and safety. And so every school is different. Every school has different needs, and we do want them to exercise good judgment, both in the moment and also while they're planning. But I will say that one of the things that we've struggled with mightily is reducing the variance in application of regulation and practice. And so we did some extensive...
Can you say that in a different way?
Yeah. We have a wide amount of variance between schools in how they do things versus what they do per se. And so to that end, we did some extensive training last year, which will now become an annual effort to level set with our student code of conduct and to have leaders talk through different practices that they have. Mr. Jones mentioned at the beginning of his presentation our adoption of the standard response protocol. And if you are not familiar with it, it's worth a Google. The We Love You Guys Foundation.org has an approach to emergency management that we've adopted. Over 50% of schools and school districts in the country follow the standard response protocol. So it's worth it for us to engage in activities that try to reduce the variance between schools.
And I'm just mindful of time.
Yep.
And so just to dive deeper in this a little bit more, is the system set up as it is because of, I'll use the word differences of approach, if that's synonymous with variances, trying to, I personally believe that within our very diverse school system, there might be situations where variances are allowed within measure, right?
Yeah.
So what is the school system's allowance there, or ability to allow that for flexibility?
Our code of conduct is a good example of this, where there's a range of reactions to individual incidents that occur that allow for principal judgment. And that's what we would want to see.
And so that's on the reactionary side.
Correct.
What about on the proactive safety side?
Definitely on the proactive safety side. And again, I think that this comes down to prioritization and giving the principal some latitude to prioritize what they would focus on as their most important thing for that day, that week, that month, that year, to hammer home efforts. For example, if you had an event at your school that was tragic or that was of concern, and you had staff members who were doing different things during an emergency protocol, you may want to focus more on following the standard response protocol and doing those drills proactively.
If there is a principal who wants to have a deeper relationship with public safety, or have the ability to utilize new technology, do they have the autonomy to do that?
It depends. I would say with technology related to safety, we do have a rigorous review process that we would want to make sure that things like student privacy and things that meet contractual requirements would be adhered to. So I think we would be interested in hearing from them as to what their ideas might be.
With the 10 seconds I have left, I'll say, in a school system as diverse as ours, I think we should afford more flexibility for each principal to keep their own community safe as they see fit. 0. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, too. We're going to follow with Councilmember Dawn Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. A couple of things just to clarify some stuff, because the law that everybody's talking about is near and dear to me. I wrote much of it. I reviewed every single class that every school security employee and SRO gets trained on across the state of Maryland. And I've spent from April of 2019 until Labor Day weekend in 2019, before the school year started, training people all over the state in this curriculum. So this is really, truly near and dear to me. I want to be clear, the role of an SRO, aside from the last piece of it, is the public safety piece, the law enforcement piece. The other part is an educator, a mentor, and a trusted advisor. And so I know there was the whole, we don't want them patrolling the hallways piece of this, but when we were talking about, and I want to thank Dr. Taylor for saying we are in the human services business, and we're talking about relationship building, it's critical. And I don't think it's okay to say you can build a relationship, but you can't because you're wearing a uniform. That's not serving our community. It is not. And so we need to allow for flexibility so that that relationship piece does happen and is part of that trusted adult advisor ecosystem inside of our school buildings. The other piece is adequate coverage was a term that got inserted into the law in order to deal with the fact that at the time we were writing this, there was already a police staffing shortage across the state of Maryland, right? Some of the folks who were advocating for the bill wanted a police officer assigned to every single school. We didn't have enough people. Adequate coverage was the phrase we adopted and put into the statute to deal with the fact that we could not have one at every school. The intent was they would be at the high schools because that was where the primary areas of concern were, and then based on geography and other considerations, because you have some schools where the middle school and the high school are near each other, or sometimes a high school and an elementary school are close together. It left that flexibility for how to handle that. And also, school safety is not just an issue where we're talking about administrators and teachers versus students. We are also talking about dealing with threats to the school community from the outside, as well as, and I hate to say it, but it is the God's honest truth, parents and guardians coming to the school with other issues, other concerns going on, but we have got to be real and got to deal with those. With respect to the audits and safety evaluations and school emergency plans and everything like that, we built into the Safe to Learn Act a provision that shields that, prevents that from being disclosed under the Public Information Act. It's in section 4-314.1. Okay, that's why those things are not made public. And there are reasons for that, which is to the point that others have made. Sometimes there's copycat behaviors that occur based on things that get said in the media. So I want to touch upon a few things and let you respond to those. I served as a facilitator this year in the truancy prevention program, and I loved every day that I got to spend with those kids. But one of the things I learned in working with the state's attorney's office on that project is that not all school personnel participate in the TPP program in exactly the same way. So some of the pupil personnel workers and some of the counselors sit in on those sessions and actively participate. In other circumstances, they don't show up at all. And something should be done to help make that more uniform because it is a valuable program. I also, note that, and thank you, Councilmember Glass, for raising this, but, principals and teachers are educators, not investigators. And we need to emphasize that. And we need to make sure that everyone, each person in this ecosystem is collaborating, because that's not necessarily always the case. And yeah, we're human beings, so not everything's perfect, but try again. And we need to make sure from the top down that that is the message that we are giving. With respect to some of the more recent incidents, and I'm going to touch on one of them because I happened to be reading a Baltimore Banner article this morning. And it noted that the camera was found at Walter Johnson on April the 7th. It says that police were notified on Wednesday, and based on when the article came out, that was Wednesday, April 15th. That is 8 days later. And the search warrant was executed. The arrest was made on the 15th. And what I'm struggling with, as let me put on my parent hat, is why there was an 8-day delay in the reporting of that, and wanting to know what is the policy in terms of those notifications when something's discovered. What is the policy for handling of evidence? Because again, you're not investigators, you're educators, but we do have our partners who are investigators, and things need to be handled promptly. So could someone please speak to that?
Yeah, without getting too hyper specific on an individual case, the camera was discovered by students and not turned over to school administration until the day it was reported to law enforcement.
That's very helpful.
There's a big gap in the reporting. So that's the solution there, is that it actually was. And the time from a report to principal to report to law enforcement was within the hour.
That's very good to hear. And I guess if there is a policy or procedure that does exist within the school system, and this may be a board question or Dr. Moran, that, in terms of the expedience with which evidence discovered or items are turned over to law enforcement, I would love if someone could speak to that.
And after that answer, we're going to turn it to another council member. Go ahead.
Just very shortly, it's immediate. It's the expectation. I mean, we do have a process for both student code of conduct and employee conduct, and we follow progressive discipline for both. So we have consequences for those things. And in this case, fortunately, that wasn't something that merited that.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it to Council Member Kristen Mink.
Thank you all for your work on these important issues. I think everybody has talked about, and I think we all in this room agree that early intervention, strategic prevention, that's the ideal, right? Whatever we can get in front of, we all want to do that. So I just wanted to better understand what that looks like. How are we intentionally using both data, and we saw some of this, so I know that some of it is happening, but wanted to give you all time to expand on it a little bit. How are we intentionally using both data as well as, in this part I didn't hear as much of, but as well as communication with community members. So that could be with students, with parents, with families, with community leaders, as you get information in different ways. How are we using that to intervene early? If it seems like there's something that could be bubbling up, situations that we might be able to get ahead of, to be proactive, to be in the right place at the right time, to move resources, to move programming before something happens.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Mink. I'll be happy to speak to that. So first off, we utilize the Maryland Safe Schools tip line. We also use Lighthouse, which is monitored consistently by our safety and security personnel. We often, and I think over the past couple of years, we've really spent time focusing on our relationships with our communities, relationships with students, relationships with parents. A lot of tips come directly in from our students, which takes a lot of courage and happens all the time. And there are many times where we're convening meetings well into the evening, Saturday mornings, to bring together resources from our Montgomery County Police Department, DHHS, internal from Montgomery County Public Schools, to develop a plan for a specific situation and deploy those resources immediately. We kind of just stand in a ready position. As soon as we receive that information, we're very fortunate to work with the police department where we reach out to them, and we have a representative right there. Street Outreach Network is a part of those a lot of times, so it really differs dependent upon the actual threat or situation.
And if I could be, I appreciate that. And if I could be a little bit more specific, I'm talking about like before there's a threat, before there's there might be a date at this time when it's kind of like we're noticing conflicts between these groups of students that are bubbling up in certain ways. And I'll just say that I have seen that come up in my own district. And a lot of times it's hard to really see the resources moved there until there is an incident. And so if that's work that we need to be more intentional about funding or otherwise getting in place, then we need to know that. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to what's currently happening.
So again, I can again speak directly to that, and I think one of the ones that you're referring to is at Montgomery Blair High School, which was also noted as an example. Honestly, it goes back to Mr. Glass's, Councilmember Glass's question around the role of the principal. We count on our principals a lot of times to be the person that kind of raises the flag to say, I need support, and these are some things that are being exhibited through the community. They often receive that information directly from the community and then disseminate it to us, which then triggers us to make that exact same call that I just described. So I think a lot of it has to do with trust. A lot of it has to do with information sharing. A lot of it has to do with presence, which Dr. Taylor talks frequently about.
And I hate to interrupt, but I only have a minute and 15 seconds. So I appreciate that. And also for work that is so important, there's got to be best practices here. And I think that it's a way to support our principals to provide maybe some guidelines also, because we have seen a lot of variance from principal to principal and school to school. And we've seen some really great success stories. And then we've seen principals who will hear about that like after the fact and be like, oh, like had I known, maybe, we would do something like that too. But I think that having a policy, including, for example, a policy, which we've talked about previously for when principals should flag something for the Street Outreach Network, for example. A policy like that would provide some cover so that there's an awareness, not just amongst schools and principals, but amongst community members that if the Street Outreach Network is involved at your school, it doesn't mean that you're having gangs and fights and all this stuff. We're actually being very proactive. And that's just kind of the status quo. Whereas I think now there's a different sentiment there in some places and potentially a hesitance to call them in because of that perception.
I would be remiss not to speak on the work that our Street Outreach Network does in terms of just being flexible and being able to
Absolutely.
go to a community or a school when there is an issue. I will say a lot of the work that happens with MCPS is a direct relationship of their close relationship with the administrators in the school level. I know the Sun team has gone to MCPS's principals meetings to present. But with that said, I think your point to a policy at an MCPS level, central office level is needed. And I'd be happy to work with them on that. But most of the work to date has really been those in-school relationships that our team has with the principals in the building.
Thank you.
If I might add a few words, if that's okay. Okay, just very quickly. In my previous life, before being on the board and so on, Montgomery County has an issue with any time the police is called or there's gang issues in a school. We sometimes cannot even say the word gangs. When I had a program, I was forbidden to say the word gang. We had troubled youth. Okay, so if we're gonna have these conversations, we need to have them put everything on the table, because there was a culture for many decades, right? Do not call the police because we're going to have a bad reputation as a school. And I think what we're doing with the board, and Dr. Taylor is doing, and the team is doing these days, is you need to do what you need to do and bring the resources that need to be, done, because that is in the best interest of the kids, because that is our job. So yes, we still have some folks from that culture still in our schools, and we're working with them. But I want you to assure you, and with all due respect, I don't really think we need a policy. What we need to do is hold people accountable, which Dr. Taylor is doing, right? And hold all of us accountable, including the parents who are watching at home, right? Because this is something that affects all of us. To say when we have a problem and the police are there, it's because we need them. Or when we have an issue, we will call the Street Outreach Network. And when we have an issue, we will call the mental health providers and so on. But we need to start coming away from that culture of don't say anything because we're going to get a bad reputation. That does not at all help anybody, and especially the young people and the kids who need those services. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
And can I just give a police perspective real quick? So we have mandatory notifications to actually to Marcus, to Mr. Jones's shop when we either make an arrest or we have a traumatic incident in the community that involves a student. So we make those notifications. But what's also interesting, and I think is important to note, is when our CEOs are in the schools, a lot of times they are the individuals that these students are going to, who are explaining the issues and the heat in the community, and they convey this message to our CEOs, who then convey it to the appropriate investigative units and also to the schools. So,
thank you for adding that comment. We're going to move on. Councilmember Shara Evans.
Sure, thank you. Such a great conversation, and I'm going to piggyback off of Board President Rivera Oven a little bit. As I was sitting here listening to everyone and just really thinking about this previous weekend, I was thinking about how can we involve our youth more and how can we involve the parents. Just this past weekend, the NAACP held a youth summit at Richard Montgomery High School. I came a little late, but I did know the various areas, their topics that they discussed, and one was safety and security. I think it would behoove us to really listen to what our students are saying. That would really be helpful, as well as have our parents on site to hear what's happening, to know what resources are out there. I think what the Street Outreach Network is doing, what the 480 Club is doing is really great. I think our parents need to know more that those resources are available and who are the various organizations that are working alongside their students. And I just think that we need to have like a town hall, right? And I don't know if you want to call it the state of the schools, but people really need to understand what's happening and what they could be doing more outside of the school to ensure that what's coming inside the schools will not come inside the schools. But I'll tell you this, I had a listening session back in February in Montgomery Village in Gaithersburg, and the 480 Club, Joseph Hooks, he came and he brought quite a few students. And the students were talking about, and one was a graduate of MCPS. He was talking about all the resources that he was hearing about at the listening session that he was not aware that was available. And he talked about, I need a job. I need something to do because otherwise I'm going to end up in jail or prison or end up dead. So help me stay out of the streets. Give me something to do. So that equates to jobs in the summer. I was looking for recs as well, right? That equates to more things happening for students after school. I brought it back to Councilmember Lukey about Steadwick Elementary School wanting EBB, right? The students were talking about, and there were quite a number of students there saying, you know, we can't participate in things after school because we have to take care of our siblings. And that makes a difference. You know, sometimes return on investment won't be able to be measured, but that looks like a parent being able to stay a little bit longer at school. That looks like students being able to have access to responsible adults who are, or adults that can be role models that can show them the way just by example. So I'm thinking more of not what's here, because what's here is great, but we need to reach out and touch with more people. And I think people just need to know what's happening more inside the school system. You know, me having served on the board and on the county council, I make the assumption that everybody knows what's going on, but they don't. They really don't. They do not know that they live in a county that is so rich in resources, and we need to let them know. And I think how we let them know is we talk. And as Ms. Rivera Oven said, we be candid, right? We need you all to do these things at home to help us at school. And then when they come to school, here's what we're going to do to better support them. But I just don't think that everybody knows. I think we all can do a better job at that. And I think that sometimes on an annual basis, we all need to come together and just have a conversation out in the community, have the trusted partners that our families and our students look to and trust. And if they say, if somebody from Street Outreach Network tells a student to come to an event, they're going to come. And if you all accompany them, because they will feel comfortable if you all are there, they will come. So I just think we should think about how we can outreach further into the neighborhood. I know we have a committee meeting at 3:45, so those are my comments with 55 seconds to spare. Yeah.
Thank you. I am only going to let speak those who have not spoken because we do have a joint committee work session and we need to end at 4 so they can meet at the latest. So next I'm going to go to Councilmember Lori Sales.
Thank you, Council President, for convening this, and thank you to all of our stakeholders. I do want to start by just commending the school leadership, our superintendent, for the response that you displayed during the Wooten High School shooting and, you know, avoiding the loss of life. And you mentioned the standard response protocol. Was that the response or training that was used, and is that across all of our schools?
It's across all of our schools. It was new this past year.
Okay.
I'd give us a B- in terms of implementation and execution, and Wooten was a great test of that readiness. It's unfortunate anytime we have an event like that. We certainly learned a lot from that event that we detailed in our after action report. And it did, as a positive, created an impetus for all of our schools to refresh that training with staff. So that is our practice moving forward. It was our practice this year, and it will only get better with time.
Thank you. And, you know, as chair of HHS, just thinking about reintegrating our students back into school after they have had interactions with law enforcement, what is that two-way communication channel to ensure that we're sending our kids back to school better than they left, and that our school community is prepared for the wraparound support that's necessary to minimize interactions with law enforcement?
I'll let some of my other colleagues and some of the other panelists respond to this, but I actually think that this is an area that we really need to improve.
Yes.
Fortunately, this is very few students. And that this really is only a handful of students a year, but all the more reason that we probably need to have a lot more intensive support and a standard response of how we would do that.
Yeah.
And what makes the most sense, and really wrap around to make sure there's not any recidivism, that we're not repeating mistakes of the past, that we don't find ourselves in a position where there's undue bias against the kid or the family for something that might have happened. But obviously, I'll defer to other panelists. But I think this is an area that we could improve in some.
Yes. Anyone want to
Yeah, I can speak to that. The Handle with Care program was initiated a few years ago. And officers, when there's an MCPS student that's involved in a traumatic event, whether it be a domestic dispute that their parents are involved in, or a death in the family that officers go to, then the officer themselves makes a notification to the Handle with Care that is then distributed to the school. They don't say what happened, they don't say what to do or what expectations, but just know that this child was involved in a traumatic event.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know that a lot of the data usually focuses on, gun safety, suspension protocols, and drug use prevention. But just want to make sure that we're not overlooking other vital areas impacting our students' safety and their well-being. And I, went through the packet and I saw the 2 mentions of sexual assault. And I know it's not, a very fun topic to discuss, but from adults to children, I'm hearing about children even in elementary school who are displaying inappropriate behavior. And so just want to understand what sort of training are we requiring of our educators? I grew up in the time of DARE, and that was for drug prevention. But I visited the Treehouse last week, and just hearing about some of the cases that we're having in our schools are heartbreaking. So.
Yeah, very, very quickly, every educator as well as our volunteers go through child abuse and neglect training. And this is actually something that I feel like our school staff really excels at. They do notice behaviors that are out of place, do make referrals to our nurses at HHS, do make referrals to counselors on the staff to dig a little bit deeper. And I think that we've caught a lot of things that otherwise probably would have gone unnoticed or overlooked. But with all things that can be something that continues to get refreshed and responded to every year, because it is so important. And if we weren't addressing those things as proactively as we are, it would be an even more significant issue than it already is.
And these are required trainings that...
They are required trainings. We do go a little bit of an extra mile with our volunteers and with folks that are going to be with children unsupervised. We go through the process of printing them. We go through the process of the child abuse and neglect training. It's not very long, but it does give you some tangible things that you can walk away with, where you have a better understanding of behaviors to look for and things to do and not to do in that situation.
And just talking with our officers in closing, just so they can respond as well. Once a situation is identified of an adult who has been accused, what is the response to the situation? Because I met the officer and I think he said it's just him and another guy that are in charge of responding to all of these complaints school-wide for 150,000 students. So I don't know how big the team is that's investigating these
You're referring to
complaints.
the threat assessment?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a team of 3 or 4, depending on their staffing. And they don't just handle school threats. They handle all threats like that across the
Even
county,
at
although the
homes.
vast majority are, this time of year especially, are based in the schools. They do a remarkable job, and they work 22 hours a day, it seems like sometimes.
Yeah, so I look forward to the next meeting because I think response times and the ratio of officers in responding and investigating is going to be so important as we're talking about limited resources and moving forward. So thank you.
Could I just
Great.
make one
Yes,
quick
please.
point of clarification?
10 seconds,
Real
'cause
quick.
we-
It's just that in response to like sexual assault cases
Yeah.
or different cases, say, there are investigators from the police department, divisions that actually do those investigations, and they're the ones who respond, not just these 2 officers that are noted. These are your special
Oh, no, I actually
victims.
met one of the officers at Treehouse.
Right.
That
Yeah, but it's a
actually
larger
responds.
team. It's a larger team that does special victims. It's not just a couple of detectives. I just want to.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Very important and an excellent question by Councilmember Lawrence Sells. The last question of the day comes from Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom. Again, we have a joint committee work session after this, and that's why we cannot
Make
do
it
a
nice and
second
short.
round.
It'll be
Go ahead.
short. First, thank you. Thank all of you for everything that you do. It's so wonderful for you to be to know that you have our kids, keeping them safe, and so I so appreciate that. I also wanted to just thank Councilmember Evans for bringing up the issue of communicating our services. I say that all the time. We have so many services in Montgomery County, but not everybody knows about them. And so the people who are well-informed get access to services, and the people who don't have any clue don't get the services. And typically those are the ones that need it the most. So I just wanted to say thank you to that. I wanted to talk a little bit about issues that happen outside of the school, right? They're students, but they're not within the school system at that particular time. So, and I represent Germantown and Clarksburg, and we go through the same cycles that all my colleagues go through in terms of the crime that happens in the neighborhood perpetrated by youth. And I just wanted to talk briefly about, I really appreciate the information that we get real time about incidents that happen. And those incidents are on social media. Sometimes when we get the text from our communications officer, she's getting it from social media. So I appreciate that it's real-time data. But the problem is, and the residents don't get any follow-up about what happened after the incident. So all they're getting is crime is happening, but they're not getting the follow-up of what the circumstances were, that the bad guys were caught. And I understand the sensitivity that you can't share a lot of facts because otherwise you can't do your job effectively. But there has to be some kind of happy medium. And we've worked very well with the police department in terms of town halls and getting information and sharing information. So just some thoughts on how we can help our residents not feel like crime is happening and we're not doing anything about it.
So, as far as communication, sometimes it's the principal that can be the most communicative to the community. And so we try to work with the school system. A lot of times we're asking, hold on. And the principal really is like, I've got to get stuff out because it calms things. So I think we have a good working relationship. There's sometimes that we just can't release information because they're ongoing, very volatile, and we need to make sure things are in place, and we've got people maybe in custody or we've tracked down people. So I think we do a good job there. As far as the communication of arrests and what's going on in the community, I would concede that we could improve on our messaging when we do make arrests. We try to provide as much information without giving up the case. With a lot of the things, like even you had said, they're ongoing investigations, and so it's kind of hard to provide information that we're really not privy to give to the community. But we try to be as transparent and open with as much information as we can. And I will say that we could certainly do better in following up to kind of close out things as they get a little older down the road, where it's not as critical that we keep that information from the community.
Appreciate all the work that you've done in communicating with us. Just one last thing, the Street Outreach Network. Everyone said great things about it. I know that they're in Gaithersburg and Germantown, but we don't have a relationship with them. We have tried for 3.5 years to have a relationship with the Street Outreach Network, and so hopefully we can do that in the future. I just needed to say that. Thanks.
That's a follow-up right there. With that, thank you so much to every single person who came today. We're going to, I think this was very useful. First time it ever happens, and I look forward to having more after the budget. Thank you for the partnership. We're gonna adjourn this meeting, and immediately following up this meeting, we're gonna have the T&E and go join committee work session. So if you're here for that, stay in the room. We're adjourned. Thank you.